Hi, I'm Katie Crane, and this is the Pilates Lounge. Hello, my friends. I'm Katie Crane. This is the Pilates Lounge, and I'm excited about today's episode. It's actually born from a reel that I popped on Instagram not long ago, and it went absolutely bananas. Within a few days, it had thousands of people watching it. I've never had so many comments on a reel, and it highlighted the importance of this subject. Today, we are talking about form. What is form? Do we need to take form into consideration when we're teaching or when we're practicing Pilates? Why does it matter so much? And how can we bring the concept of good form into our own movement and into our teaching in a way that makes the topic accessible to everybody? Because one of the things that has been spoken about after I posted this reel was that some people believe that form is absolutely everything in a class, while the flip side of that coin is that other people are almost repelled by the idea of teaching good form. So here we go. Because this topic had such a huge impact on social media, I decided to go and have a look at the definition of form. So as a noun, form is considered as the visible shape or configuration of something. Some similar words might be shape, configuration, structure, or appearance. Another definition of form is a particular way in which a thing exists or appears. So we could think appearance, embodiment, incarnation, semblance, or expression. As a verb, the word form is defined as bringing together parts or combine to create something. So we could think of set up, establish, create, bring into being, or initiate, or to make or be made into a specific shape or form. So we could think of shape, sculpt, put together, create, or produce. Now, these are all definitions and synonyms from the dictionary. When I read this, I was like, well, that's Pilates. To me, that is one of the core definitions of what we do, is we configure classes. We help people configure the way that they move in a way that feels better. We are always looking at people. How do they appear to be moving, especially if they're in pain compared to when they're not in pain? What is that? What is the semblance of what they're doing? How do we express that in the way that we teach? What is the setup? How do we create a class that feels good, that potentially looks good, and that the client enjoys doing? What are the shapes of the body? What are the shapes of the movement that we're creating? How can we put all of that together to produce something that people want to continue coming back to? So isn't Pilates in itself a description of the very definition of form? You could say yes or no. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just here bringing the conversation to you. So what is good form? And it really struck me that how repelled some people were by this very topic of form. You know, people were coming on to social media and saying there's no evidence-based literature that tells us that good form makes any difference to people in pain. There's no evidence-based literature to say that good form matters. If we think of good form, or if we're seeking perfection and perfectionism, then we're not allowing Pilates to be accessed by everybody, and Pilates should be available to everybody. Well, yes and no. There are even arguments for that, one could say. But my understanding of good form is not black and white. So when I'm watching these comments flow in and the arguments that people are having, and people are obviously passionate about this topic, which is beautiful in itself, because if we don't have passion about what we're doing, what does it matter? So the topic of form absolutely matters. Otherwise, this reel wouldn't have blown up. But I wonder if our idea of what form means may be repelling us from teaching good form, or it may be inscribing us to forcing people to conform. So, what is good form? Well, it's subjective. Good form is subjective. It does good form, the same form to be good, does not apply to every single body. If I've got 10 different people in a class all doing the same exercise, let's take something as simple as footwork, for example, good form for one person is not a paper cutout for the next person. Not every single body in that class looks exactly the same, even though we are lending towards the same concept. We are lending towards the same outcome. Everybody's form is going to be slightly different because we are not paper cutouts of each other. And who wants to be? Of course. We are individuals. This is the beauty of humans. This is the beauty of the body. This is the beauty of what we do every day in studio, whether it's our own practice or whether we are practicing on somebody else, is the individual artwork that we're looking at, which ultimately to me, the body is art. So good form, if it is not linear and it is not black and white, it is not generic, and nor is it set in stone. Well, what is it? I believe that good form is really about working with the individual, observing where they are today in their practice. What are their goals to achieve in the practice? And how can I improve their experience? Maybe for them is to be in less pain. So good form for somebody in pain is learning how to work in a way that they are no longer experiencing that pain. Maybe it's changing their alignment. Maybe it's bringing awareness to their setup. Maybe it's playing around with load, either unloading or uploading. Maybe it's getting a muscular sling to work better. So looking at the whole body. Maybe it's about really getting down to the nitty-gritty of one certain structure to be working better. Say, bring it back to footwork. Do we need to get those quads working better? Or do we need to get the hamstrings working a little bit more? Or are you bending too much flexion? Is that bothering the knee? Are you hyperextending and therefore no longer accessing the muscles and pushing into ligaments or hyperextending? And is any of that a part of the experience that you're having from a negative perspective? And if so, how can I change that to create a positive experience for you so that A, you walk away feeling like, hey, Pilates was awesome. I went in feeling pain. I left with less pain. Tick. Or, wow, that instructor really took time to listen to my feedback. They heard me when I said that something hurt, and they worked with me to change what I was doing until it no longer hurt. Tick. Or, wow, I never realized that when I did my footwork, my knee was rolling in or rolling out, or I was hyperextending the leg. And then once I changed that, it felt better. Tick. Maybe all of these experiences happen to that person, but maybe none of those experiences happen to that person. Good form from an instructor's perspective is about observing, listening, proactively working with the body in front of me to try and create a better experience. Maybe on the first time that I work with that person, I don't quite nail it, but The important thing is I have taken extra time to work with the individual to try and start to solve their puzzle. Maybe it doesn't always happen the first time. That's normal. Because the thing, especially if we're working with something complex, and I'm going to speak about this in a different podcast because it absolutely deserves its own episode of working with pain. But especially if I'm working with somebody in pain, pain is much more complex than simply readjusting the form to create, in italics, better form. Pain is much more complex than that. So the experience may not be immediate. If we start to change the way that somebody is moving so that it may be more appeasing to our eye, that may or may not have a positive payoff in the body. And that's the whole point with form, is it is individual. So for example, if somebody comes to me and they are knock-kneed like nothing else, but they've been like that their entire life and they're now 65 years old and their knees are not bothering them, I'm really not going to work very much on trying to change that form. That form is good for them. It's not bothering them. In my mind, you could argue that, that's fine. I'm just letting you know how I work. What I am doing is taking into account the individual goals of the person, and then I'm working with that. The reality of it is sometimes, for example, if somebody comes to me and they've got knock knees that they've had for 65 years, they start practicing Pilates 2 years down the track, that alignment does start to shift a little bit, not massively, but sometimes a little bit, simply because Pilates does access all the muscles in the body in all ranges of movement that the body is capable of, that I'm working with in front of me. And in turn, it starts to strengthen some weak muscles, lengthen some tight muscles, and activate muscles that may not be working in day-to-day life. So part of the job of Pilates is that we're cross-training. So as we cross-train the person without even trying to change alignment, sometimes things just start to happen. It's the magic of Pilates. I'm not saying that I'm trying to shift that person's knees. There's a huge payoff when it comes to this. You know, if I'm trying to change bony alignment, there's a payoff in the rest of the body. If I try and change what's happening in the knees, then up the line, down the line, so in the feet, in the hips, potentially even further, is also going to change. So I need to decide as an instructor, how far am I willing and how far is my client willing to play around with that? Now, if they're coming to you in pain, in chronic pain, or with an acute injury, then I'm going to work with that person to try and change what it is that they're doing to improve their daily experience, aka take away the pain. That's my job, I believe. And then that is better form, is the feeling, right? So the thing with form is it feels good. Good form feels good. And when something feels good, you could disagree with me and that's absolutely fine. But when something feels good, it tends to look good as well. Good form is a part of what we teach. Good form really does embody the Pilates principles. And if you haven't listened to that episode, I did a 3-episode series specifically on the Pilates principles, which was actually the first 3 episodes of the Pilates Lounge, when I went into each individual principle, what it means and why it's so important. Now, of course, form or good form is not one of the principles, but the principles do include control, center, concentration, precision, flow, and breath. So if those principles don't embody the definition of form, then we're speaking a completely different language. And that actually was one of the comments on this reel that went viral, is one of these people, and they base everything they do on evidence-based practice. And we really do speak different languages, because to me, good form is not on paper. Good form has an educated intuition behind it. And what I mean by that is, once we've been working with the body for many years and we've seen thousands of bodies come through And we're doing the same thing every single day. I could not tell you how many times I've taught footwork since 2006. Many, 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 many times with many different bodies, many different shapes, many different experiences. And still, I'm able to teach that individual in front of me good form for them. It's an educated intuition that we grow into from seeing all those bodies, from starting to understand what it is that we learnt on paper. Because when we first learn, it's in a book, it's in a manual. These days, it's online, but ultimately, it's a paper cutout of this is what it is. And if we have a look at a lot of the Pilates manuals, the people in those photos that are performing the exercises that we're learning as new instructors, dancers, ballerinas, gymnasts, like they have this paper cutout form that they're able to show us. It's not what we actually see in the studio. It really does not transpire to the real body in front of us. What it is a foundation of understanding. If we don't have that, almost, I guess, this perfect outline of what it is that we're looking for, how do we even know where to start to look? Because if we're just teaching a class and form in our mind has no place in the class at all, then what is it that we're teaching? What are you teaching if you're not teaching anything about form? It's almost like taking a bucket of paint, throwing that paint against a brick wall and calling yourself an artist. I'm sorry, that's not how you become an artist. Now, don't get me wrong. There probably are famous artists out there who have thrown a bucket of paint against the wall and gotten accolades for it. They've become even more famous for it. There's been a story about them. No doubt that has happened. But you don't become a renowned artist by doing that. There is a framework to becoming an artist. There's a background to becoming so well known that you throwing that paint against the wall is something that people talk about. So if you don't start with a solid framework and people come into your class and you're just teaching movement on a reformer with absolutely no guidance or no substrate, no boundaries, then it's simply not Pilates. I'm not saying don't do it. Do whatever you want, but don't call it Pilates. One of the comments on this reel, because I had said, that pretty much that you can teach whatever you want, but if it doesn't follow the Pilates principles, and the principles really do embody the idea of good form, then simply don't call it Pilates. Because, Pilates originally was named by Joe Pilates Contrology. I wasn't around back then. I've read a lot of books about Joe. I've spent a couple of decades completely immersing myself in Pilates practice and learning from as many people as I can that have also committed their career to Pilates. And I can tell you now that form is one of these major foundations that we are teaching, and Contrology was what it was actually called before we changed the name to Joe Pilates work or Pilates. People deserve more than just being thrown onto a machine and doing any type of ad hoc exercise. It's not just about being on the machine. It's about taking the time to work with the individual and improve their experience. And once we have good form, we feel in control of the movement we are performing. We are able to perform more reps without causing pain. Maybe we are able to load or unload and still feel the muscles that exercise is intended for. Good form means that we have improved coordination and the ability to add complexity. So maybe we can add props. Maybe we can include other body parts moving. So if we're doing scooter, a standing exercise, standing on one leg, pushing the carriage out, maybe then we could start to do, I call it running man, but I'm not sure what it's actually called, but your arms are also moving. And then I was taught once by an amazing instructor, she added on throwing a ball to me while I was doing that. So there's a whole lot of different complexities that we could add on to really challenge the mind, body, spirit, to improve coordination, include spatial awareness, improve our relationship to the body simply by first improving form. Now, above all, good form means that our clients are safe. Good form means that somebody is not falling over or banging the machine in and out. They're not losing control. They're not losing balance. Teaching somebody good form is about teaching them to have control of their body. And once that happens, when we have control of the body, there's this amazing reward system in the body called dopamine. And when we do something well, and when it feels good, and when we are successful, then we get a hit of dopamine. And dopamine makes us feel good. And it makes us want to come back and do it again. So, my friends, you may now recognize how important good form is to me as a Pilates professional, as somebody who absolutely loves practicing Pilates, and as somebody who believes that our industry is so important. And I believe that we should have so much respect for the work that we do, that we take the time to teach our clients good form. Good form is for the individual. We must remember that. But good form makes a difference. Now, if you want to learn more about things like good form, because you recognize the importance of teaching well, then I suggest you jump onto my website, www.thepilateslounge.com.au. We have some reformer teacher training programs coming up this year at a few different studios around Australia. That's right. We are slowly expanding. One of the most important things when it comes to expansion for the Pilates Pro Academy is that we find host studios that resonate with and align with our core principles. And that really is about upholding the industry standard, making sure that students are receiving the education, the support, and the mentoring that they deserve, which absolutely includes face-to-face mentoring, and that we create a community of instructors that are going to carry the torch of Pilates for the next generation to come. Because the work that we do is so, so important, and I cannot stress this enough. This is why the Pilates Lounge has been created. This is why I'm here with you today, because Pilates changes lives in ways that are almost unfathomable sometimes. I'm so pleased to be here with you. I'm Katie Crane, and this is the Pilates Lounge. Thank you for joining. Now, before I finish up today, I just want to remind you, if you have enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you like and share it with your Pilates professional and movement loving friends so that we can get the word out there and really create a community right here in this hub. Be sure to check out my website, thepilatesprofessional.com.au, and have a look if you can find any workshops, which I'm sure you can, that you may be needing right now. Remember, I also do a 6-month reformer teacher training mentor program. I call it a mentor program because I literally personally mentor each student through their own program until they are ready to teach reformer. It's what I specialize in. And I think that this is one of the biggest missing links in our industry right now, is that we have these wonderful diploma level training workshops that people can do to become very comprehensively trained in Pilates. But when it comes to reformer, it's so wishy-washy out there that you could become an instructor online with no personal access to a mentor ever, or you could become a reformer instructor as a stepping stone to diploma level training. So where I come into it is I just do reformer teacher training that is recognised and recommended by the Pilates Association of Australia, which means that my students then become members of PAA. It's super important for our industry and it's what our students deserve. So if you know somebody who is looking to become a reformer teacher, then this is where you want to send them, the pilatesprofessional.com.au. They can reach out to me. I can have a call with them and see if I have a program that is coming up that is suitable for them. And or I also do a host of online workshops for you to expand your repertoire and your understanding specifically of the Pilates work. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to you listening to the next episode next week. I'm Katie Crane, the Pilates Professional.